Hello everyone, my name is Lori Quiller and welcome to the July episode of AFCLC TV. I'm with the Outreach Division and I'm your host today. A North Carolina native, Howard Ward is a retired Air Force colonel and master navigator with more than 4,400 hours with KC-135s and C-130s. His most recent operational assignment was as commander of the 317th Airlift Group, Dyess Air Force Base in Texas. He commanded 6 squadrons of 1,200 aviators, maintenance professionals, support personnel, and 28 C-130J aircraft engaged in worldwide combat aerial delivery operations. And in January of 2017, he joined the Air Force Culture and Language Center as director. Mr. Ward, thank you so much for joining us today.
Lori, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. And thanks to the team at Air University Television, Les and the guys back in the booth, and Michaela, and of course, the great AFCLC family that makes the magic happen in the Air Force's global classroom.
Yes, sir. So let's talk a little bit about an editorial that you published recently with Yonder. It's called Stop Calling It Soft Power, the Declaration of Dependence on Language and Culture for Integrated Deterrence. Why did you write that?
Let's start at the beginning. When in 1944, May of 1944, General Hap Arnold released a publication called Introduction to the Army Air Corps, where he was introducing the public to this brand new capability that was going to be really unleashed about 3 weeks before D-Day. And the way he described the Army Air Corps, of all the ways he could have described it in terms of platforms, in terms of technology, he chose to describe it as a global network. He said it's a global network of aircraft, air crews, bases, supply lines, communications network. And he goes further to say that while our aircraft and crews are making themselves understood in places all around the world, he pointed out that our airmen were making themselves understood in any of a number of foreign languages. From the very beginning, General Hap Arnold saw the application of air power from a systems approach, and one of the underpinnings of that system was language-enabled airmen that were bringing culture skills to make this global network happen. Now, fast forward to today, nothing has really changed about the nature of our mission. We still have a global mission. You still have to look at it from a systems lens. We're an expeditionary CONUS-based force with a global mission. But my fear is that we're not looking at culture and language as essential as Hap Arnold did to making this the entire chain happen. So that's why I wrote the article, and I think a term that's often used, soft power, to describe culture and language skills, I think it's problematic in that it betrays the essential nature of the global network.
So we've talked just a little bit about soft power. So now let's talk a little bit more about hard power, and let's distinguish between the two for those who don't know.
Sure. To stay with soft power for a second, it's typically associated with influence and things that take longer time. So, of course, culture and language skills are something where you build relationships over time that gain influence that are beneficial to us in our national security objectives. Hard power, on the other hand, is typically associated with weapon systems out there, bombs, missiles, aircraft, kinetic effects that come from force. It's easy to understand. But what you have to do is step back and look from a systems approach again and look at what does it take to employ a weapon system anywhere in the world. That's where the global network that General Arnold described and is still relevant today comes into play. And culture and language skills are not nice to have. They are must have, and they must be deliberately developed as part of that essential network for the application of air power.
Is that why you use the analogy of a gun without bullets in your article?
Yep, darn right. A gun without bullets, Lori, it's a paperweight, maybe a club, but you have to look at that firing a gun from a systems approach. That there's a gun, there's bullets, there's a supply chain that delivers bullets, there's a shooter that needs training. All of these things are important if you want to get the effect from firing that weapon. So in essence, if any of those things is not there, you don't get the effect at the end where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
No, without specifically saying it, we've also been talking about the National Defense Strategy so far. Can you elaborate a little bit on how the Air Force Culture and Language Center fits into the NDS?
Sure. General Brown teed us up in a couple of really good ways, starting with Action Order Charlie for competition, where he told us that we needed to be very familiar with our adversaries and their ways of war, to include their cultures and languages. And the importance of that is understanding human decision making. Ultimately, warfare comes down to human decision making and who can do it the fastest and the most effective, who can be proactive, who can make someone else have to adapt. That's what he was kind of pushing us to with that. But in terms of developing the kind of force that can work with our partners and counter our adversaries, he told us that we needed to be a force that was integrated by design with our partners and allies, and possess a quality that he called global fluency to be able to do it. And to really put into context what that brings to a strategy of integrated deterrence, where we're charged from the very beginning to integrate at every stage of planning, campaigning, and force development so that we can achieve dominance in operational tempo and shape adversary perceptions. The very specific thing that culture and language brings to that strategy, we can learn from this perfectly ordinary, off-the-rack sport coat that I'm wearing today.
How's that?
Take a look. This coat, it's made of many parts. There's sleeves, there's pockets, there's buttons, cuffs, collars. It takes something else to turn it into a coat, and that's the stitching. Without the stitching, these parts are not going to accomplish anything, but the stitching is what transforms all these parts into a coat that makes it something useful to go do it. Culture and language is the stitching that brings the strategy of integrated deterrence in the Air Force's operating concept of agile combat employment together, to where, once again, the things that we bring to the table, our partners and our allies bring to the table through culture and language, the whole is much, much greater than the sum of the parts.
I love that analogy. That's really good. So one of the key objectives of successful integrated deterrence is shaping adversary perceptions. Can you give some examples of how AFCLC is achieving that objective?
I would thank you for teaming me up for some storytelling. You know I love to do storytelling. Let me tell you a story about three scholars in the Language Enabled Airman Program, or LEAP. Last fall, supported the Marine Corps. We take great pride in working with all of the services to help with culture and language skills, and in return, we get really valuable things back in terms of joint warfighting, something that's a high priority from our Chief of Staff, and also the integration with our partners and allies. In this particular exercise, our three LEAP scholars were the facilitators between the U.S. Marine Corps and the Philippine Marine Corps. They were incredibly effective at what they were doing, so effective that the commander of the brigade of the Philippine Marine Corps that we were working with, General Jimmy Larita, he gave this quote in the after action. He said 34 times he's done that exercise in his career, and it was the first time that the Americans had brought culture and language skills with them.
Wow.
They got more done in that exercise than they had ever done in an exercise before. And please don't come back to do the exercise without bringing them. And in digging into the after action report, what we really discovered was, because of the cultural connection, they were able to provide effective performance feedback from day to day. You know, Americans, particularly in the military culture, we're pretty brutal about feedback. It's very direct, and everybody understands that you need to check your feelings at the door whenever you walk into the room for a debrief. Every culture is not tooled to give and receive performance feedback the way that we do in American culture. So what our LEAP scholars were able to do was to build enough rapport so that effective feedback could be given in a way that it could be received and processed and then transformed into the next day's activities, to where performance kept getting better and better and better. Now, to your direct question about how does that shape adversary perceptions. Now, when an adversary is looking at us, they can't look at it and just, what do the Americans bring to the table? In a cylinder, all to themselves. What do the Philippines bring to the table? All to themselves. It is, what can we do working together to do it? When we are able to integrate with our partners and allies, Lori, we can bring more mass at any given time and in more places, when we're not just with our partners and allies, but we are working as one single team. Yet again, the whole being greater than the sum of the parts.
Absolutely.
That's a great example of how we're doing it. By working effectively with our partners and allies, we completely confound adversary thinking, and we make them think twice. They have to adapt rather than making us adapt.
Is that what it's going to take to accept language and culture skills as something other than soft power?
Well, Lori, I hope it's not going to take failure, because it did the last time we were using the word inflection point, when we were dealing with insurgencies rising up in Afghanistan and Iraq after 9/11. And it was at a great price when we discovered the hard way that we really didn't know the enemy, ourselves, or our friends. But when General Petraeus at that time was charged with writing doctrine for counterinsurgency, one of the centerpieces was integrating with the local communities, where we could build rapport and trust with them, hopefully find a way to communicate that there was more to gain from working with us than to fear from co-opting with the bad guys, and we were able to turn the tide going forward there. There's optimism. There's much reason for optimism, actually, that we've learned a lot of those lessons in the recent withdrawal from Afghanistan. A lot of the folks that were junior officers and junior enlisted at the time of those insurgencies are now senior officers. They're now senior enlisted. Culture and language skills is one of the first things that was asked for. But what it's going to take to go to the next step, you and Michaela play an important role in that, in telling the story of how culture and language is making a difference operationally and helping to transform, all these parts into something that's greater as a whole. So helping to get that word out. It is still just going to take time to where it's instinctive that when we're planning bilateral, multilateral exercises, that we're baking this thing in from the beginning, integrated by design. With our partners and allies. And we are at inflection point. General Milley, our chairman, just published an article in Joint Forces Quarterly a few days ago, talking about how we're at a strategic inflection point right now. It's time to break that mental mindset that culture and language is nice to have, and go to a must-have essential element in a systems way of approach of thinking. To the application of air power, to go do that and make it the focus of deliberate development, not an assumption or something that we hope will be there, but something that we're investing in to make sure it will be there, because these are skills that can't be just in time trained.
It's not a nice to have, it's a must have.
It is a must have.
Okay, here we go. Before we go, I have to ask you, because we have a tradition with you, what's coming down the way from AFCLC? What have you got cooking? What's some coming attractions?
Oh, Lori, there's always something cooking in the AFCLC kitchen, and twist my arm. Okay, I'm going to spill the beans on a few things. We are so proud of how far we've come with our AFCLC mobile app. Mobile app 2.0. We are quickly approaching our 100th video.
Oh, wow.
And App 2.0 is less than 2 years old. We started at 0, and in the very near future, we'll be posting our 100th video, and you're going to be making a big splash out of that. But when you think about that's averaging a little bit more than a new video a week going out. So we're working really hard to put on-demand content to a busy force with a global mission that needs to learn things quickly to help get them familiarized. Our number of courses continues to grow. Our courses are a firm part of the prepare phase under AF4Gen, so more and more airmen are hearing about us that way. Our field guides continue to grow. We just published our Brazil field guide, and we have an emphasis on Indo-PACOM for the rest of this fiscal year as we release Singapore, Papua New Guinea, and the Federated States of Micronesia. You look at our map of where we have field guides for, you can see that we've covered continental Asia really, really well in the Indo-PACOM AOR.
Nice.
We're back into the first island chain for the 9-dash line as really well, and now we're developing capability rapidly into the second island chain, which is going to be important as contingency locations under the ACE construct. So lots of great things happening with our app. There's a rumor that we may be having a symposium coming up.
There is a rumor of a symposium coming up.
And what is a symposium without featured speakers?
This is true.
Now, should we tell them?
I think we should tell them a few.
All right. Okay. Here, we'll tell you a few. How about we start with a 4-star general. General Mike Minahan, the commander of Air Mobility Command, is going to be our Friday featured speaker. So looking forward to having him on the stage.
And he's been busy lately.
He sure has, with an unprecedented exercise, Mobility Guardian, where we've heard he crossed paths with one of our Japanese language LEAP scholars.
Oh, nice.
Out during the exercise, and is going to have a great story to tell for us that reinforces our theme, integrated by design. Out there, we also have Major General retired Suzanne Veras-Lum, the president of the East-West Center. So, from a military background, an academic background, an amazing story to tell about integrated by design. We have Dr. Montgomery Fate, cultural anthropologist at the Naval War College. Is going to be with us, very influential in the design of the human terrain system from back in the day, and a great story to tell us about integrated by design as it applies to the contemporary operating environment. And as of yesterday, Chief Wendell Snyder, the senior enlisted leader of U.S. Forces Japan, is going to be with us, and a great story to tell about interoperability with our partners in countering malign influence in the Indo-PACOM AOR. And we're still working on our 5th. I'm going to hold one in the clip and make you hang out just a little bit longer, Lori. It's going to be a doozy, though.
Nice little surprise for later.
Yes, yes, and there's always things cooking in the Language-Enabled Airman program. Besides our courseware with the eMentor platform, our traditional lights, we've developed in partnership with our great friends and business partners down at the Air Force Special Operations School and the Defense Language Institute detachment. They're huge shout out to Lieutenant Colonel Jared Cordell and Dr. Sasha Churinoff is the leads there. We've developed a very specific course type for Agile Combat Employment, or ACE, for our LEAP scholars. They're going through a class that USAFSOS already offers that has a lot of concepts on cross-cultural negotiation, things like that. Then 2 weeks of dedicated language training to work on scenarios where there's a lot of technical vocabulary. They're in the early phases of ACE to help us gain tempo, because in these very specific technical areas, we can communicate with our partners. We can move rapidly. We've done several language cohorts already this year. Our French language cohort started today.
Oh, wow.
And upcoming, we have Russian language cohorts, and then next year, Japanese language cohorts. Really, really interesting Black Sea cohort that we're putting together with multiple languages. Several others that are going to be highly relevant and must-have assets for the combatant commands as they're looking at the application. So there's never a dull moment in the AFCLC Global Classroom, trying to stay on the cutting edge of culture and language education and our unique career spanning learning model.
Definitely follow us on social media, because we'll be telling the stories for sure.
And you tell them so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And thank you so much it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today.
Always a pleasure.
Special thanks also to my outreach partner behind the scenes, Ms. Michaela McCurry, to Mr. Les Fineff and his AUTV staff who have hosted us here today, who is also our AFCLC faculty and staff, and especially those of you who have joined us for this very special episode of the Air Force's Global Classroom. And remember, we are AFCLC.